The Jaguars make a couple of moves before the combine and free agency. How does it affect, well, the draft and free agency? I'll tell you all about it here on Locked On Jaguars.
You are Locked On Jaguars, your daily Jacksonville Jaguars podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, I am Tony Wiggins, and I'm your host of the Locked On Jaguars podcast. Thank you for joining me here on Locked On Jaguars, where it's your team every day, and we thank you for making us your first listen. Gotta let you know that we are also free on all platforms, wherever you get your podcast. They are absolutely free, just like I just said. You ain't gotta pay for it. New people, glad to have you along. I know there's new people out there because every single day I look up and there are more subscribers and more folks commenting. So we'd like to thank you. And as I said, if you're watching on YouTube, you can see my background. Pull up, take your shoes off, relax your feet, grab you a cold one out of the fridge because you are at home. You can even sit in my recliner and grab the remote if you want to. We're going to talk today about the draft, free agency, and the approach that the Jacksonville Jaguars appear to be making. They have re-signed or have restructured or have they've re-signed, restructured, whatever you want to call it, but they've gotten some of their old parts back. First, it was quarterback C.J. Beathard, who agreed to an extension and a new contract. And then when I look up, the next thing I see is Foye Oluakon, their fabulous linebacker who they signed in free agency last year, cleared up some cap space by restructuring his deal. That's a very good development, and I'll tell you why in just a second. The Jaguars then re-signed Jermichael Hasty, their backup running back, keeping them out of the running back market in free agency and more than likely keep them out of running back market early in the draft as well. And then they re-upped or extended Roy Robertson Harris for 3 years for $30 million, the defensive lineman who had a very good stretch down the stretch last year as the Jaguars made their playoff run. So what does all of that mean for Jacksonville? We'll make sure we discuss all of that. And in segment 2 and 3, we'll also talk about what to look for at the combine based off of these things. So what are some of the things that the Jaguars are thinking about doing? And now you can start to pinpoint where they will and will not go after people, because you have to watch where you spend your money. So first, the Foye Oluakon extension. I think it's a good idea because it frees up cap space. The other thing is who they're extending matters. And what I mean by that is, if you look at all of the free agents that they signed, they extended the two of the guys who have been the most productive, especially Foye Oluakon. That means that they probably think he's going to be around long enough to get to the back end of the extension, and there won't be a dead money issue with him. And that's why you do that. You move things around, give bonus, you substitute bonus for salary. And in doing that, you spread that bonus out over the life of the contract. So you extend the years on that contract sometimes, and sometimes you don't. You just put the money, you give them a bonus, they get the cash now, and then you have it show up later on as an amortized bonus later on in the salary cap. And they don't have a problem doing that with him. That tells me they're either going to be here for a while, or they feel like whenever that bonus has to be accounted for in the salary cap and on the rolls, that the team will have so much salary cap space that it does not matter. Like, I think they're projected now to have like $79 million next year, so they can take on some of these bonuses that they're pushing back. What you probably won't see them do is push money back for older players or push money back for players that are okay, but you don't know if they're going to be here because what that creates is a super dead money situation for guys who are no longer on the roster. You're not being productive. The worst thing you can do is look up and see that they're on the books for somebody for $15 million and that player is playing somewhere else, right? So that's not what you really, really want to see or do. The Roy Robertson Harris, before I get to Roy Robertson Harris, because that's a big one. The JaMychal Hasty re-signing tells me that they still believe in Snoop Conner because they gave him some carries late last year. They really like Hasty and what he did. I think I like Hasty and what he did too, to back up Travis Etienne. So that gives them 3 running backs. Do they go out and look for another player that gives them a little bit of extra? Well, if you didn't have a running back like Travis Etienne, then you might be able to go, well, yeah, they're going to look for somebody to give them some pop. Etienne is the pop, though, so I don't think that that's what they're looking for. I think they're looking for somebody sure. I think they think Snoop Conner can be a straight line power back who can give them some short yardage. I think they think Hasty is a little bit of everything. Even though he's a little bit on the small side, he is a very powerfully built guy who plays the game a certain way. So I don't believe that you're going to see them reach for a running back. We knew it wasn't going to be first or second round, but I was thinking third, fourth round with all of the guys that are in the draft that they get one of those young hitters to come in. And then I realized Etienne is a young hitter. So I've been talking about them possibly signing a veteran power back, especially a pass pro guy. It doesn't look like that's where they're at because, they have 3 guys now that they're going to have on that roster, and we know they're all going to make it. And remember, Jamal Agnew is also someone who carries the ball on reverses and on jet sweeps. So, yeah, I think we can mark that off when we start looking at the combine. Quarterback, I thought that they would be in a veteran quarterback market to maybe upgrade to someone who has won or done a little bit more than CJ Beathard. I was thinking, along the Jameis Winston or the not Baker Mayfield. Someone did bring that up online, but no, that's not where I'm thinking that, or I was even hoping that they go. But the Sam Darnolds, I was thinking that maybe something like that, like that they're getting so good, and whenever you get better, you start to get closer to possibly having to have someone step in for you the way Chad Henne stepped in for a couple of drives against Jacksonville in the divisional. You let him down the field to a touchdown. So, young guys don't give you that. But CJ Beathard's been around longer than, a lot of us realize. So CJ Beathard also is re-signed. I'm going to talk about Roy Robertson Harris. It's very, very important that we bring that up. And then the overall landscape of what this all means for Jacksonville. It means that they're running it back, man. And when they run it back, what they're doing when they're running it back is they are depending on a couple of things. It's not necessarily new blood. They're depending on a couple of things, and they're trusting themselves. So hold on to your seatbelts because we're going to talk about that here in segment 2 on Locked On Jaguars. After I let you guys know about today's sponsor. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. That's right. FanDuel is the absolute truth, and we are proud to have them as one of our sponsors here with Locked On Jaguars. The midway point of the NBA season is here and gone, and now it's the perfect time to download FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because new customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's right. That's bonus bets back to you if your first bet doesn't win. Just download the FanDuel Sports app. It's safe, secure, and easy, super easy to use. Then you can bet on everything from the money line to point scores and threes drained. How about the Kings going and the Clippers both going over 170? That was crazy the other night. FanDuel even lets you combine your bets for a chance at a bigger payday or payout with the same game parlay. So don't miss a chance to get your no sweat first bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets when you go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon to learn more. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. You guys are official partners of me. That's right. you are a part of the Locked On Jaguars podcast because it's your team every day. And we thank you for making us your first listen as always. Big signing, Roy Robertson Harris. 3 years, $30 million extension. So when I see an extension, I have to let you guys know what my understanding. I have not dove into this one in particular, but I was told by a former GM as well as a former agent that when there's an extension, I was told by two former agents, the original year left on the contract is not torn up. Like Roy Robertson Harris had one more year left on his deal. He had a $10 million cap hit, but only like 2.3 or 2.7 or something like that was guaranteed. And if the Jags would have cut him, they would have saved over the difference between that and $10 million, which is about 7 point some odd $million. They would have saved that on the cap. My thinking was because I said that if the fans are right, because we've even had, I think I heard Hall of Famer Tony Baselli, he may have been joking. He said, try to trade for Aaron Donald, but a lot of folks looked at the Jaguars and said, well, I think they need help on the defensive line. And most people said they even need more edge rush, and I think they need to move Trayvon Walker down inside with his hand on the ground. First of all, with the way that they play defense, you're going to need two jumbo guys, right? You need big guys. And then the other guy, if they were going to move Trayvon Walker with his hand on the ground, it would be in Roy Robertson Harris' spot. So if according to fans and a lot of media people, if the Jags still needed edge help, and you can argue whether they do or don't, but if you think they need edge help, so how do they get the edge help, right? It's going to cost you. There was Javon Hargrove. There were all of these talks about all of these cats and this guy on the edge and that guy on the edge and maybe this big guy. There's been some Deron Payne talk. How do you do that when all of these guys are making so much money? So that's why for me, it was like, okay, if we're going to make that part of it be true, we have to prepare for this. And one of those things was Roy Robertson Harris being let go. Roy Robertson Harris is a nice player, right? I don't condone or I don't push for the Jaguars to be letting go of productive guys. But this goes to show you that he on tape and in their building is a lot better than any of us thought he was. I know he's a nice guy, and I know he played well down the stretch, especially when Trayvon Walker was injured. But this goes to show you that the way that we feel about people and the way that the team feels about those same folks is very, very different. And I'll go back to the time when folks wanted Miles Jack to be put into the game when he's a first or second year player. And I stood in line in the locker room and I was like, man, when they going to get the kid in? And I had 3 veterans. Well, it was 4 actually. One of them didn't comment on that. He was talking to me about some other stuff. Why he stuffed a bison burger with no bread in his mouth, by the way. I just saw this dude too, and he recognized me, man. And we had a nice little talk at a restaurant. But there were 3 other guys, none of them are here. All 3 you know very well. And I made the comment, how they going to get the other guy on the field? And they said, well, who are you going to put in for? And I remember at that time, and I knew it wasn't necessarily the way I felt, but I knew that there was this thing amongst fans about Paz. And Paz was already coming out on 3rd down, and he was a liability at some point in the passing game. I'm talking about Paul Posluszny. And so I was like, everybody's suggesting that Paz. There were 3 people that all went shh and said the actual word that rhymes with it. Like, he ain't benching Paz. They said it like if Ray Lewis walked in the door that he wasn't benching Paz. So the team, the players, and folks who are in the building, who are working out, who are in the rooms watching tape will feel differently about a certain player than any of us will. Roy Robertson Harris might be one of those guys because they gave him an extension. And I told you, yeah, they're not giving extensions to people that they don't think are going to be around for a long time. So I honestly think that, first of all, it's a 3-year, $30 million deal. If I'm not mistaken, now we'll find out more, but I don't believe the Roy Robertson Harris the year left on his contract. I don't think that gets torn up. In fact, I think the non-guaranteed portion, which was over $7 million, I think that portion is probably going to be given to him in a bonus. Let's just say he was due $2 million in salary and over $7 million in bonus money, and a total of $10 million. I say, hey, here's what we're going to do. We're going to front you the whole $10 million. We're going to guarantee that this year. We're going to put it in a bonus. We're not going to cut you. And then we're going to guarantee you another $10 million. So what it is the 10 he was due this year, and is hypothetical now. And if there's a 3-year, $30 million extension that starts next year, $10 million of it is guaranteed. So he probably has a very, very low salary this year, right? And if he made the roster this year, he was going to get $10 million eventually. Well, now, instead of just having $2 million in guaranteed money, which was going to be the salary, because like I said, he would have saved the team over $7 million and some change if they had let him go. Well, now a team comes to you and say, nah, we're going to front you 10, and then we're going to give you another guaranteed of 10. So you wake up today with a guarantee of $20 million when just a few minutes ago you had a guarantee of $2 million. You take that in a heartbeat. And the Jaguars created a situation where Roy Robertson Harris is going to be a part of this rotation for at least 2 years. And he's going to be a part of this team in a heavy way for 2 years, but he'll save them some salary cap space. In doing that, there's no way they can go out and address that position, can they? They can't add anything to that. If anything, you wonder if it's going to be Fadakazi, if Foye Oluakon is going to be the next person that they ask, hey, can we come see you? If they don't, that tells you that maybe they don't foresee a situation where he's here 4 years from now or 3 years from now. I want to talk about Jawaan Taylor, and I want to talk about what this Roy Robertson Harris extension means to the NFL draft and about the NFL draft and free agency. And I'll do it in just a second here on Locked On Jaguars. All right. Rolling along here, third segment on Locked On Jaguars. It is Combine Week. We're going to have Demetrius Harvey from the Combine and hear from locally and try to get any of my other brethren from the Locked On Network. I heard there are people all over the place going to the Combine this year. I know Corbin Smith from Locked On Seahawks, James Rapine from Locked On Bengals. They're all going. I just saw my DM where everybody's catching flights. So I'll try my best to get some information from some of those guys. Also tune in to Locked On NFL on Wednesday because you'll get a show with me on there and we'll be talking about it even more. But for the Jaguars, free agency wise, what does this mean? This means that they're not in the backup quarterback market. They're not in the running back market. They're not in the 3 technique market unless they see something in the draft that they like a Bryant Young from Alabama, and he's there in the 3rd or 4th round, and they want him as a young depth piece. I can see it happening. For the other free agents, I heard that they're really actively trying to get Jawaan Taylor signed before the market. Good luck with that now because that's Drew Rosenhaus, and you know Drew ain't taking a pay cut, and he shouldn't for Jawaan. And Jawaan was flat out the best offensive lineman on this team last year. But it looks like what they're doing is they're trying to keep everything together. And what that means is they're going to depend on player development, meaning some of the young guys. I mentioned them. Snoop Connor has to come around. Monteric Brown. If he can play better and come around, that'll keep them at least to a limited extent in the free agent market. I know that they want to get something done with Evan Ingram. It's going to be a trip wondering if Evan Ingram and Jawaan Taylor really push to try to get everything that they feel like they deserve. But what this does is it puts the Jaguars in a situation where it is going to be about familiarity. Now, it's not the familiarity that I cautioned the fans and the Jaguars about. That familiarity was just sticking with guys that you knew only because you were the one who signed them, picked them, or because you like them personally. I don't mind the familiarity that comes along with continuity. Like if they're going to run it back because they believe another year in the program. If we could do this with only 1 year in the program, and what I mean in the program is all the stuff that Doug Peterson brings in. If he can come in and totally do a total install of a new offense and a new defense, if he can come in and handle the mental and psychological aspect of where these players were after losing so many times and being under the coaching of Urban Meyer, if he can come in and do all of that while regaining the trust, and then they could still find a way to hit 10-9 overall and be above 500 and actually be one of the top 8 teams in football by the end of the year. What would happen if we bring all of these guys back and we're not starting? They didn't even start at ground zero. They started negative. They had a hole to dig these guys out of. So what if we can do all of that, but we have a fresh start and we don't have to go back and fix a whole bunch of stuff? We got to kind of pick on. You never really in the NFL pick up where you left off because what you did last year doesn't matter. But with continuity, now they're just adding more stuff to what's already on the plate. Now they're just building on what has already been built. We were talking, I've always in the past used the elevation when building a house and the foundation. Well, the foundation is set. The foundation is Trevor Lawrence, of course, and Doug Peterson. They've had continuity in the coaching staff with the exception of Jim Bob Cooter. Press Taylor, people tried to speak to Press Taylor. Jaguars said no. The only way Press leaves is I think Press has to be given a head coaching job. But beyond that, I think they're just going to build on the continuity and try to now add a few wrinkles. Let's do the things that I taught you last year. Now, let me take this a step further and add a few wrinkles. And once we all get used to each other, they're going to bring in Calvin Ridley. And that's a big piece because Calvin Ridley immediately, in my opinion, becomes Trevor's biggest weapon. He's had a year in Atlanta that nobody else on this team has had and has seen. He's a former first-round pick. So I think Calvin Ridley, I think they believe retain everybody, add Calvin Ridley, maybe add 1 or 2 veteran pieces that aren't bank breakers in free agency. But mainly, let's go in and focus on the draft and get us at least 3 starters from the draft and some depth pieces that we can bring along. And I think that's where they are. I think at the most, the Jags are saying, look, keep everybody and add 6 pieces. Well, you're going to add more than that, but 6 that you can depend on. Calvin Ridley, 2 veteran free agents, guys that you can spot, and then the guys that are picked in the first 3 rounds. And if you hit a home run, you get guys in round 4 and 5 that can contribute and play and even start the way Kansas City has done the last few years. Like there's 7 picks, 6 of them were starters for them just this past season when they won the Super Bowl. So that's where I think they are. Where I think and believe the Jaguars are now is about player development, continuity, and we'll just keep building it from there. It shocked me a little bit. I was a little bit surprised that Roy Robertson Harris was the guy that they decided to hang on to and extend. But that goes to show you that they know more about their people than we do. Okay? But what this teaches us all is this. It teaches us that we have to be very, very careful when we're saying they need two more linemen. They may very well get 2 linemen, but what they're not going to do is use a first-round pick on a guy that plays the same position that Roy Robertson Harris plays. What they're not going to do is go out and sign Calais Campbell if he wants to be a starter, unless they're going to bench Foley Fatukasi. What they're not going to do with Roy Robertson Harris being extended is allow Trayvon to play that position. No. No. So if everybody was on this, we need to go out and add this, and we need to get this, and we need to use a priority resource on that and the other thing. The Jaguars are running out of positions, and this is a good thing because they're making the playoffs. They made the playoffs. They're running out of positions where they absolutely need to go out and add X to that spot. You can start now when you're looking at the combine, pay attention to the corners and anybody else that can play nickel or in the slot. Okay. They have their 2 linebackers that are going to start next year. They actually have their first 3. Unless they do something with Josh Allen, they have their 2 edge rushers. They have at least 2 of their 3 defensive linemen, and if they get another one, it's either going to be a veteran guy who's not going to cost them a bunch of money. I don't think a rookie's going to beat Foye Oluakon out. They have 3 of the 4 members of their secondary. Actually, they have their entire starting secondary already. They just need a nickel and a slot. Do they use a first-round pick on a guy who, when they're in base, he doesn't play? And I think their base is still a 3-4-4. There's still 2 safeties, 2 corners, 2 off-ball linebackers, 2 edge rushers, and 3 down linemen. Now, once they get to where they want to go with nickel, then you see them go to a 4-2-5, and that's where you see that other person come into the game. Or unless they play a team that starts out with 3 wide and they have to go ahead and make the switch right away, which that happens a lot. They have, even if they don't retain Jawaan Taylor, they have their 2. There is no reason to let Jawaan Taylor go and then use a first-round pick on a tackle. None whatsoever. Unless he just wants an astronomical amount of money. So they have, since everybody says that they have 3 guys that can start on the offensive line, Cam Robinson, it would be a nightmare trying to trade him because of the dead money that would come in, because this is actually the first year of his deal, and he's already received a bunch of money. No, technically, this is not the first year of his deal. He wasn't a guy. He was under the franchise tag, but he's already received a boatload of money in his hand. You have to look at the amortization of the bonus. I think he has 26 million or something like that in dead money. All of that would accelerate into the cap if you traded him. So he's not going anywhere. And then you're not going to get what you're supposed to get for him because he's coming off of an injury. So he has to prove that he's healthy again. But they need a guard. I saw one of these sites that said they need a center. They don't know the Jaguars very well because Luke Fortin is the starter. Ben Barch is coming off of an injury, but he can be upgraded. They have their starting 3 wide receivers. If they get Evan Ingram back, they have their starting tight end. Of course, they have their quarterback, and now we know they have 3 running backs. Where do you get the help from? Where do you get the help from? We're going to answer that question on our next episode. It's like if they're full and they keep all of their players, then where do they use, what do they take with their 24th pick, their 2nd round pick, their 3rd round pick, and what do they do in free agency? We're going to talk about all of that stuff on the next edition of Locked On Jaguars. Until then, you guys take care of each other. I'm Tony Wiggins. Make sure you come back same time, same place tomorrow.